welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and today I am joined by an author who is here to talk about an absolutely gorgeous novel. It was a beautiful reading experience, and I am very excited to talk about it. So welcome. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Sure. I'm Patricia Grayhall, and my book is A Place for Us. It's a novel.
It is really, really lovely. Before we talk about the book itself, I'd love if we could talk a little bit about your career. I know that you were in medicine previously, and I'd love to know about that and how it worked into your journey as a writer.
Absolutely. So I was accepted to medical school before Title IX guaranteed women equal access to education. So 95% of my classmates were men, and I had almost no female mentors as I was going forward in my education and training. Of course, that's changed dramatically in recent times. I retired 10 years ago, and I was in 2019, I was downsizing and I came across some old journals that I was about to throw in the burn barrel. But I glanced through them and I thought, wow, this is pretty historical and important, and I should write a book. But of course, I'd never done creative writing before. So I really had to do a crash course in learning craft, which I did. I applied the same stick-to-itness as I did to my medical training by taking courses in memoir writing and writing in general, and started writing my first book, Making the Rounds. And I have to say that writing a memoir is like walking out into the world naked. That memoir was based in the late 60s and 70s, and it was basically me stumbling through my 20s, the messy relationships, the brutal medical training, but also some cringeworthy moments I'd rather forget. But the only saving grace about that was, I was writing about the person I was 50 years ago, so it was almost like writing about someone else. So some friends probably thought I shared too much, and of course that's the gamble you take when you tell the truth, but telling the truth is what humanizes you for readers. And what that book got a lot of awards, starred Kirkus Review and among their best 100 books of 2022. But what really made it worthwhile was the feedback that I got from readers, that they felt validated, that they could see themselves in my book, and they felt less alone, and all of that made it really worthwhile. But then readers start saying, "So what's came next? I mean, what happened afterwards?" But I didn't really think I had another memoir in me. It was a pretty wrenching experience to do the first one, to go back through all the drama and trauma of my youth. But the thing is, I'm older, and I've had lots of experience. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've learned from the mistakes, and I have a treasure trove of stories to tell. So that's when I discovered autofiction. Uh, and it's really my writing sweet spot now. So most novel writers do draw from their own lives to some extent, and A Place for Us, my new novel, is no exception. The core of it comes straight from my experience getting together with my partner. And if you can picture this, it's 2003. We've rediscovered each other after being apart for 22 years, because we couldn't get together the first time because of immigration problems. She was British, I'm American. And we find that we're even more in love than ever, but neither the UK nor the United States will allow us to live together legally. The Canada would, because in 2002, they passed uh, they started recognizing same-sex couples for immigration for the first time in Canadian history, but you had to prove that you'd lived together as conjugal partners for a year, and there was no country in which we could live together legally for a year. So in our home countries. Um, so it was catch 22. And that's, that served as kind of the core of this novel, uh, how it's a little bit of a romantic suspense novel, but how the characters navigate that barrier. Although the characters are not me and not my partner, it's fiction.
I am curious about, when you are writing autofiction, drawing on your own experiences, where do you put the literal truth on the page and where do you get creative? Is there an approach you have, or is it sort of unique in the moment as you're crafting a character or a scene?
Yeah, I'm definitely a pantser rather than, oddly enough, because, my uh, medical practice uh, is highly structured, um, but my writing is not. I just write the scenes which are terrible, and then I go back and revise and revise and revise. So Grace Paley said, write from what you know and write into what you don't know. So I wanted to explore in my book some of the big, go beyond my own experience to explore some of the big messy issues that affect us all, not just the queer community. And in the past, I think queer writers have tended to want to portray their lives in a positive light to the dominant culture. But more and more, I think that we want to see ourselves in portrayed in literature as the complex, multifaceted people that we are. And so in A Place for Us, I bring up an issue which is which heterosexuals don't have a lock on, which is partner abuse. And I wanted to explore how normal, healthy people find themselves sometimes trapped in abusive relationships. And it's complicated because there's love, there's good times, and there's a hope that the partner will change. And um, sometimes that traps people in relationships where they lose their agency to act in their own self-interest. So that was one of the issues that I explored in the book.
Mm. Absolutely. Yeah, and very movingly and evocatively. I'd love to talk more about the characters who are involved in these dynamics. First, I'd like to talk about Joe and Lauren. I'd love to know what went into them both as individuals and their dynamic. What's your approach to writing? I guess like both, I would say, like chemistry or tension. Like there's always a balance between what is what is pushing them together and sort of what is pulling them apart.
Right. Well, I think that I wanted them to be multi-dimensional characters and have flaws, which they do, and but also be relatable. And I wanted the reader to be able to root for them to succeed, which in the end, of course, they do because it's a romance, which was also true in real life for myself and my partner. Well, clearly there's tension. I mean, there's tension, especially when they get back together after 22 years and they're in fact with other people. And they want to honor those commitments, but they can't deny the fact that they're, wildly attracted to each other. So, and they have to navigate that. So it brings up issues of loyalty and honesty, and ultimately the question is, why remain committed in a relationship that's unhealthy? And there's basically, there's no valor and only heartbreak in staying with an abusive partner, hoping things will change. So regardless of your sexual orientation, sometimes you have to risk and go all in to get what you want, as Joe and Lauren did. And I wanted to provide hope to readers that even against seemingly insurmountable odds, love will prevail.
Yeah, it's very, very affirming in the end and uplifting, even though it is very realistic about the struggles that they face. You're very evocative with the political and social context too that shapes their relationship and the struggle to both live together as partners. Um, I imagine, a lot of it was based on your experience and your memory. Did you also do any research into the time?
Oh, sure. I mean, I did I did do some research as to the then and the now, um, in terms of the immigration experience. I researched quite a bit too about what's going on currently in how one immigrates to Canada, for example. Um, and but of course, I'm not an attorney, so I provide some resources in the back of the book for people with same-sex couples encountering difficulty immigrating to the United States, even though how many people want to do that just now, I'm not sure.
And I think that the inclusion of those sources speak to its, it's both timeless in its romance, but also very timely in how it responds to um, conditions then and now, and how the past has shaped the present.
Right.
Something I love about it is that you have these two timelines, the then and the now, and very intimate emotional storytelling and character development. Something that I found very interesting in your on your website was that, and you referenced it here, is that you are sort of want to share your experiences and your knowledge. And I'm curious about like if there is some sort of attempt to speak to younger generations to fill them in on the history and what life was like before and now.
Absolutely. So, as it's no surprise that, many LGBTQ rights and freedoms we've come to take for granted are now under siege. And many young people today don't know what it was like before Title IX guaranteed equal access to education for women, and when it was necessary to hide one's identity lest you lose your friends, your family, your job, your housing, or when same-sex couples were not recognized for immigration even. So the stories in my books, Making the Rounds and A Place for Us, show that uh, as marginalized people, we can thrive and survive and lead astounding lives despite what's going on in the mainstream society and culture. So I think my stories provide hope for these young people who are absolutely shocked by the current backlash and loss of rights and freedoms that they've taken for granted most of their lives. Um, so it's like what Brene Brown said one time, one day you will tell your story of what you went through and it'll be somebody else's survival guide. And I think just as before, um, when, if we continue to live and express our truth, um, strengthen our community of allies, and resist in ways big and small, that we'll get through this dark time. One example is just, the school teacher in Georgia who was told by her principal to take down the poster that had multicolored hands on it that said, "Everyone is welcome here." And so she did take it down, but after she slept on it overnight, in the morning she came and put it back up again. So, taking a risk, but these small things, I think, hopefully we can get through this time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think reminders of community and solidarity can help people feel brave to take those minor steps. And I
Right.
think that this book does something very important in sort of depicting the everyday of queer relationships, if that makes sense. Something I was thinking about while reading it is that, I think for a lot of people, marriage equality can seem like a very abstract concept, but your book really explores a lot of like what that means in the real world, like wanting to live with somebody, wanting to be able to visit them in the hospital if you have to. Um,
Right.
money and shared resources and taxes and all these things. I think that makes it like tangible in a way, if that makes sense. Mhm.
Yeah, it's true.
Mhm.
And in the book, of course, Lauren and Joe are both white, educated, and speak English, and in Lauren's case, French. Um, so, in some ways, they definitely have a leg up over those same-sex couples who may come from countries where same-sex marriage is not legal, where they're persecuted, where, if they don't speak English or French, or, it just makes it that much more difficult. But anyway, I think, even for white, well-educated same-sex couples, it still is hard. And I think I wouldn't be surprised at all if same-sex couples are having a really hard time right now immigrating to the United States.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think yeah, it's a really it speaks to our current times in a lot of ways and all the places that we have been as a country and how we approach our marginalized communities. And I'm so grateful that you came to talk about this book with me. What's next for you? Are you writing right now? What's on your horizon?
Oh, absolutely. So I just finished writing a thriller. So I want to try out the genre of suspense and thrillerness. And my characters, although they are Joe, the environmental attorney, appears again, along with a physician. And although characters happen to be lesbian, that's not the focus. It's not a romance. Although is a little underlying romantic tension, it's basically a thriller, and so it's an environmental thriller, basically two women confronting environmental crimes of big oil. It's called Framed, and it's probably going to come out in January.
Ooh, that's very exciting. Well, I look forward to that too. Thank you so much for coming to talk about your book with us. I can't wait to introduce this to our patrons.
Thank you.
Listeners, please check out A Place for Us. It is absolutely beautiful, and I think you will really enjoy reading it. It is time to close this chapter. Thank you for joining us.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.